Hello and welcome to another episode of TuxLives. I am going to attempt to put together two relatively shorter videos and release them back to back to make room for a whole slew of mythologos that I want to get to. I've got some really good content coming your way. But in this episode of TuxLives, I wanted to address the eternal conflict. Vim v Emacs, which is the editor supreme. This is a truly eld war from the ancient days of myth and legend that is still ongoing. It's much more of a war of words now, a joking war of words. But I got a lot of comments when I came out as an Emacs user. Some very funny comments from Vim users. But whenever this subject comes up on a YouTube channel, on a blog, on an online journal, they usually put together some kind of a poll. And, the polls show clearly that Vim won that war. Vim is what developers use. Vim is what administrators use. Vim is what hackers, quote unquote, use. Not Emacs. Emacs is a very small share of that world, apparently. But I believe those polls are misleading, and I will explain why, and I will explain why I am using Emacs for what it is I am using Emacs for, and when I will use Vim when the time comes. So let's jump right into this. We are on the Lenovo laptop rocking Linux Mint 19.3 and the Mate desktop with a beautiful background from my medieval manuscript of Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So enough of that. Let's bring up Vim. Now Vim is based on V. V is older than Emacs, and I think Emacs is a little older than Vim. Vim, I believe, stands for V improved. So it's kind of a hybrid. I think V extended from Ed, if I'm not mistaken. So Vim has these Unixy things. It has these GNU kind of things because it's very Emacs-like now, as far as I can tell. But let's just see what it looks like. This is Vim. This is an environment for editing code. And I'm going to show you a GUI front end for Vim that's a lot more like Emacs. But there's no mistaking what this is for. This is not a writer's environment. I'm sure some people have used it to write some things, but this is not a warm, inviting, or interesting writer's environment. I'm sure you can configure this in a way that it's more appealing to a writer, but it really doesn't appeal to you right away as something you want to manage a large manuscript in. And as I say, I'm sure there are many ways that you could configure this, and there are tools I don't know about. But right out of the box, it's not going to attract a writer with a big project. I look at this and, the more I learn, I see something that's useful. Useful when I'm editing configuration files and I'm doing more administrative stuff on my system, when I've jettisoned more of the out-of-the-box stuff that comes with the Linux distro now and I've gone more off the map. I could definitely see using Vim. I'm using Nano right now, but I would say Nano's no comparison to the things that Vim can do. So I just wanted to do that because in the last video, I forgot how to close Vim. And as soon as I ended that video, I remembered how to do it. So I just wanted to do that. So this is gvim, which is a GUI front end for Vim. And this almost looks like Emacs. It's got the menu bar, it's got the toolbar, and you have buffers now. I understand this is relatively recent. You have windows, so you can stack windows and tile windows, and you can split windows. So let's just split this vertically, and then you can get rid of that by closing one. This does a lot there, and this will also take plugins and extensions. So it's actually not that far from Emacs at this point. I think there's been a lot of cross-pollination. So this isn't too bad. I might be able to write inside of here, but there's a lot of things it doesn't do that Emacs does. And we have to understand, for a writer to leave the word processor, you're looking for something that's better than a word processor. You're not necessarily looking for features that do not relate to that. You just want something that's better than a rotten word processor. But you can do it in the GUI like this, and this looks like an awful good app, actually. If I were using Vim, I would probably use this. Now, I think those polls, when they take them, they're polling people who are into programming. They're into writing and editing code. They're into contributing to open source projects. They're into pimping out their machines. They're into calibrating their operating systems. They are developers or administrators. And of course, in that poll, you're going to get the majority are using Vim, because you look at Vim and it's clearly set up for that. It's not really set up to do anything else comfortably out of the box. And that's the difference with Emacs, is Emacs immediately appeals to writers. I'm not the only writer who went through all that torment of like 90 days of sweating it out before I could even use Emacs. It's because what you see is so wonderful, you just have to have it. You want it. So let's move over a workspace and take a look at my Emacs setup here. So this is not the OmniAd Emacs. This is me learning Emacs and prepping things for the OmniAd project. And if you're coming in late and you don't know what that is, please watch the previous 3 episodes of Mythologos, in which I explain what the OmniAd project is. But for those who know, this is me learning Emacs, and it's also me just prepping the work and getting to use it. But right away, this just looks cool. You want to know what it does, and you want to do something with it. And Vim doesn't stir that in your mind. So my opinion is, if you polled writers, no writers are using Vim. Like 3 writers somewhere are using Vim. I think you'd get, MS Word, Mac Write, maybe LibreOffice, but in there would be Emacs. It seems to be rising as a writer's tool as writers become aware of it. So I think if you flip that, you'd have a poll in which Vim had no presence, but Emacs had a surprising presence, maybe the same percentage. But in that context, 9%, 10%, 12% is huge, because you're competing with something that is immediately intuitive, that everyone's familiar with, that is self-explanatory, and Emacs is none of those things out of the box. I spent like 2 weeks just clicking and poking and trying things that weren't working before I actually got inside of it in any meaningful way. But just to show you, what it can do, why this is appealing to writers, why I chose Emacs. To begin with, without even using any extensions or projectile mode, which is like a project organizing mode, this is set up for organizing large projects. As you can see, I've got tabs going, and that allows me to switch between different, phases of the project. So I'm not always flipping through things. But let's just take a little trip. You're going to see I've got my PDFs up. Now look at this. You'll notice over here I'm using something called Ivy. Ivy will bring up automatically a fully featured menu for you. So right now I'm in Buffler mode, but you can see this is just beautiful. It's not that you don't have to hunt around for things with Ivy. Buffler creates this configurable table of contents, interactive table of contents for everything you have going in your project. And you can make multiple bufflers, and you can make multiple saved Emacs desktop files. So you can load everything into the same Emacs, but by loading different desktops and using different buffler directories, you can have multiple large projects going on Emacs. Now, this seems like overkill unless you're writing a very large piece of software all by yourself, or you're creating a distro with like one or two other people. Obviously, this is way overkill. Most of the work, it seems to me, from what I've observed, most of the work that gets done in development, it's like that's why Emacs has a scratch page buffer. It's not in there because I have too many things loaded, but it has a blank page that doesn't save anything unless you turn it into a file. It seems like a lot of stuff is done, and once the useful parts are ported into the main documents, it's just thrown away. Emacs is going to hold on to everything that you're working on with persistence. I just want you to see how much I have on here. I mean, this is freaking enormous. I'm just getting started. And then I have options like this, where I can have the text on the one side and the notes on the other. And, with the tiling window manager, you can do something like this, but I can drop in and out of Emacs. And, the beauty of it is when you're inside Emacs, you really feel like you're inside of an environment. It really is like almost a theme park experience where you just crawl inside. You are creating your own world. And I have done a little configuration to the .emacs file, what's called the init file, because it is like an operating system. It has its own init, its own initializer, and this allows for a very immersive experience. But I haven't even begun to explore what can be done with everything that's packed on here. But you see, there's, in something like tools, you're appealing more to the developer. But under files, it looks pretty much like a word processor. See, this is something that a writer can grasp. Under edit, you also have things that are very familiar. Bold, italic, underline, and you can find them easily. And configuring the status bar is very simple. It's right in here, just under show hide. And once you get used to the buffers, this is everything you need to know about buffers to get started. And then there's all of this that's waiting for you. And of course, it has things that you're not going to see anywhere else, like it has its own web browser. And you can also load outside web browsers inside Emacs, which is something I'm learning about. Now, do you need these silly games? Do you really need a version of Zork? Do you really need to play Pong and Tetris? No. There are things definitely that bloat all of this out, and I can see why it's unappealing to someone who's very serious about getting development work done. And they got to learn this whole elaborate thing, key chords and buffers and all of this stuff that they're not interested in. Because inside a multiplexer, they can just call up infinite instances of Vim or V, and Vim and V also do those things. So why all this other junk? Well, it's not junk if you're going to live here. Now, I know if you're working on a project in development, you are living in it, but it's very different. When you're writing prose, you're really living in that world. You're in an imagined environment. Characters have voices. Landscapes have climate. And the grass, the trees, the flowers have aroma. You really want to be in that world. And this was one of the things I hated so much about the old word processor, is it did not deliver that. It just felt so cold. It didn't have the warm, tactile feeling of a typewriter or holding a pen or a pencil in your hand, but it didn't offer the things that other software seemed to offer. And Emacs does. Emacs is both a great piece of software that's infinitely extensible, as we say, configurable, adaptable, portable, but it also creates a complete environment. It has a real, each of my Emacs has a different feel to it. It has a different vibe, a different mood. And, that's why I always have these escapist images up, is it sort of invites me into that world. And that's why I chose Emacs over Vim. I will eventually learn Vim. I want to learn Vim. I want to learn to use Vim in the terminal. It's going to get to a point where I don't think Nano's going to have the gas I need to do the things I want to learn to do. But for now, it's just way too esoteric for me. And it's not something I feel that I could write a large work of prose literature with. So that's it, kids. That is why I have chosen Emacs over Vim for what I'm doing. And I do think if you did a poll of writers, you'd be surprised to see that enough writers to be counted to have a presence are using Emacs. And none of them are using Vim. There wouldn't be enough people for it to show. And it would be the reverse of the Vim versus Emacs poll, where when it comes to the world of software development and maintenance, the choice is overwhelmingly Vim. So thank you for listening to this. I'm going to come back really soon, hopefully back to back, with an episode showing my really cool Debian retro writing setup, which I'm overweeningly proud of. So I think you're going to have fun seeing that. I'll see you over there. And until that time, good luck to you.